Hey everyone, my name is Devin Sears. I'm the field marketing manager for Bluehost, and as such, I have a wonderful job. I get to go around to a bunch of different places and events and meet with passionate people and hear about the projects that they're working on. Today, we've got a great guest. Hello, Bree. Thanks for tuning in. We've got a great guest today, Kathy Drewien. She's going to join us here in just a second, and while she gives her intro, I'm going to do a little bit of housekeeping. Um, it says waiting for Kathy and connecting. This is always where we see how well technology wants to play today. Sometimes technology gives us trouble. Sometimes it goes right ahead and works for us. It still says that it's connecting on my side. Hopefully this comes through soon. In the meantime, everyone. Oh, Kathy. Yes.
Okay, I'm here, but I can't hear you now,
Okay,
Devin.
Kathy is here but can't hear me. If people can hear me, can you hit the heart button? Give me a thumbs up or something in the comments to let me know that um, people can hear me.
I can hear you
Now you
now.
can hear me. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. And I've got some hearts from the people watching, letting me know that they can hear me
Stay
as well.
above.
Okay, wonderful. Okay,
Although you, there's a stronger lag than it was when I talked to you yesterday.
uh-oh.
No, that's okay. It'll probably ease itself out in just a minute.
I'll stop streaming my 4K videos and hopefully that'll give my internet a chance to catch up for a second.
Yeah, that would be
Yeah.
cool.
Okay, so Kathy, I'm going to do a little bit of housekeeping just real quick, just to pin the topic on for anyone that tunes in after we get going so they know what we're talking about. But while I'm doing that, why don't you give yourself a little bit of an intro and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Okay, I didn't hear half of that. Are you turning it over to me, or are you going to give
Yes,
me an intro?
you give yourself an intro while I do some housekeeping.
Okay. I'm thrilled to be here today and wish I could figure out why the internet was so much slower today than it was yesterday, except so many people online. But my name's Kathy Drewien. I live in Atlanta, Georgia, and I do wonderful things for wonderful people. I mean, what more can I say?
If
I've been in the WordPress community a really long time. So I'm assuming that a lot of the people that are joining us today are in that community. That doesn't mean they all know me because I sure don't know some of these names that I see flying by the screen.
for anyone that's just tuning in, why don't you tell us your name and where you're tuning in from? And obviously everyone hit the heart button to welcome Kathy to the call.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I'm thrilled to death that I'm not the one who has to pay attention with all those comments streaming by.
Yes, yes, that'll be on me. And if people have questions throughout this, we want this to be interactive. We want you to be able to participate. So feel free to ask questions, give comments as we go along. There's a couple things that we're going to be talking about. The big one is communicating, how to communicate, and also with
Mhm.
things going on, how to stay motivated, how to stay focused in these kind of turbulent times right now. It looks like,
Absolutely. And the more people will chat, the better we can shape our answers to their questions.
yes, it looks like so far the furthest we've got from either you or myself, Kathy, is Rodi from Spain is tuning in today. So welcome, Rodi, and everyone
Yay.
else that's tuning in. Looks like we've got a handful of people from Atlanta as well. So, Kathy, you already mentioned this, that you're heavily involved in the
Hmm.
WordPress community. Can you give our viewers a little bit of a background on your journey into the WordPress community? How'd you come across it? How'd you get started? Why are you passionate about being in the WordPress community?
Sure, glad to do that. It's easy to talk about my journey. It's easy for me to talk, period. Um, At the time I got involved in WordPress, I was a real estate broker here in Atlanta and had been running my business online since the mid 90s. So I don't know, somewhere around 94, 95, I ran across the revolution theme. It was Genesis before Genesis was Genesis, maybe 2006, whatever it was. A group of realtor friends and I discovered, woo, there's this thing called WordPress. And so we all started using it then. A couple of years later, I discovered there were all these people behind the software. I went to my first WordCamp in Birmingham, Alabama in 2008. That's a long time ago in WordPress years. Matt Mullenweg was the keynote speaker.
Wow.
And yeah, boy, I was a lot younger and he was even a heck of a lot younger.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And you mentioned that you're in the Atlanta community, right? So, and as far as I
Oh
can
yeah.
remember, you have been a key pillar in the Atlanta WordPress community. Can you talk a little bit about that? Why you participate in the
Oh
Atlanta community
sure.
particularly?
Well, when there were a couple of us from Atlanta that attended in Birmingham. And so a couple of people said, ooh, wouldn't it be cool if? So we launched a WordCamp in Atlanta in 2010. And at that time, my role was in registration. But we didn't have a WordCamp in 2011 because all of those people, except me, um, didn't have the energy for a second WordCamp. So the community support team reached out to Judy Knight in 2012 and convinced her to do a WordCamp. And it's been up and running every year since, and I've had my fingers in it every year since, whether I was volunteering at the registration desk or just behind the scenes help. I served as a lead organizer in 16, 17, would that be right? Doesn't matter what years, but served as a lead organizer. And my role in the Atlanta community now is I love the WordPress sponsors. They give so much to our community and uh, over and above a damn t-shirt. And so I want to applaud their efforts and sing their praises and welcome them to our community here in Atlanta. Unfortunately, we weren't able to do that this year because we were right on the cusp of things shutting down.
Yeah, and I've been to the Atlanta WordCamp a handful of times, and we're always met by Kathy and her team, and they're always so welcoming. So let me just turn around and say thank you as well for
Mm-hmm.
being so open and welcoming with your town. We really appreciate it. And for the people that are watching, I'd love to hear if you have a comment on what's a word camp that you'd love to go to outside of Atlanta. We'll say outside of Atlanta. What's a word camp that you'd love to get to one day? I know I saw Rhodey is viewing in from Spain. I would love to get to Madrid one day. What about other
Mm-hmm.
people? What are some of the word camps that they'd love to get to? And as some of the people are responding, let's keep chatting, Kathy. I recently found
Sure.
you have a I don't want to say obsession. Man, what's the healthy version of obsession of La Cosette cookware? Can you tell
Yeah.
me a little bit about that? As someone
Well,
who's
in the group that I
yeah,
belong to, yeah, the group that I belong to about that cookware, which is La Creuset, it's that porcelain enamel, comes in really bright colors, and it's very expensive if you're paying full retail. But anyway, in our group, we refer to it as an addiction. No obsession to it. I bought my first pieces of cookware in 1994, and then just by various things, it all got put away in a cabinet. But I recently reacquainted myself with that cookware. People didn't come here to listen to me talk about my pots and pans, but I love them. And I sent Devin lots of pictures. And those of people who live in Atlanta, who see my pictures all the time, know that I have this thing for pots and pans. But one of the things that I think is important about talking about it here is because so many people are coming here today with questions about how do you build connections, how do you find a community, and those kinds of things.
Oh, I don't know if it's just on my side or if it's on Kathy's side, but it looks like I just hit a little bit of a lag. Um, we'll give her just a, oh,
Today, in terms of there's a difference between connections and relationships and communities and groups of people. But food is something that people can connect around. You can see it now if you go on any of social media. People are talking about what they're cooking, what they're not cooking, what they miss they're eating, what restaurant food they're looking for. I mean, it is a common denominator for all of us.
I agree with you. Cooking is a huge thing that brings community together. I consider myself a little bit of a microwave master. Uh-oh, it looks like we might be having a little bit of a connection issue with Kathy. We'll give her a second to see if she comes back in. And for those of you that are tuning in, we're talking about communication. Okay, Kathy, it looks like you're back again.
Yeah, and it looks like you are too. And I'm taking a peek at my router. My router's working, but it's that time of the afternoon where everybody gets online where I am.
I stopped all the 4K that I was doing, so it might be on your end. But either way, we'll get through it and we'll keep going. I was just, I don't know if you could hear me speaking, Kathy, but I was just going to ask the people that are viewing.
I don't have anything else running. There's nothing I've got I can turn off.
You're coming in clear now. You're coming in clear now, and so we'll take it. I was just going to ask the viewers that are watching if they could choose between three things: communication, motivation, and focus. What they've had the hardest time dealing with right now, while everyone's doing a shelter in place. And while people are answering that, Kathy, can you still hear me?
I can,
Okay.
and I want to share with you something about motivation. You know, as I was running
Okay.
around the house this morning, just kind of mulling over things that I wanted to talk about today, motivation was one of the things that came to my mind. And I was thinking, you know, this is not the first time in our lives we have struggled with motivation. It just seems to be a bigger struggle at the moment. But I'm walking around and I'm doing my thing and I'm thinking about it and want to talk about it. And so I'm here to tell you I put away my Christmas tree today. I have not been motivated to put away my Christmas tree. The ornaments have been on the coffee table for a long, long time. The top third of my pre-lit tree has been in a box since probably the end of March. And today I put away the other 2/3. So I'm wondering what it is about motivation that's causing us problems now. And is it truly a lack of motivation, or is it the handy word for us to say, I'm really, really scared, but I'd rather talk about not being motivated and not being focused. I mean, there's got to be something else going on.
Yeah, and you and I talked a little bit about this yesterday. We won't go too deep into it right now, but we were talking about how as humans we look for consistency in our lives. You know, whenever we're looking to hitch our wagon to something, if we're looking for a partner, we're looking for a partner that's consistent. If we're looking for a job, we're looking for a job that will offer us a consistent paycheck. A car, we're looking for a vehicle that will consistently get us from point A to B. And I think we crave those consistencies in our lives. And I think when we enter a time when things that previously were very consistent, the food we can find at the supermarket, or whether I'm going to have gainful employment or a steady stream of income over the next few days, I think when that consistency, that thread of consistency is disrupted, I think it introduces a lot of anxiety, as one of our viewers mentioned. It introduces a lot of anxiety,
Absolutely.
and I think it kind of disrupts our focus. It kind of almost throws a big old rock into the pond and sends that ripple through our lives, of inconsistency and anxiety. Um, do you,
I would totally
yeah,
agree with that. You know, I have worked from home for 8 years. I'm a family of one. I don't have young children running around. And yet my workflow was disrupted. And you would think, well, why? Why would my workflow be disrupted? You know, nothing's changed. And there hasn't. My office looks just like it always has. But those underlying tensions were playing a havoc with, I only have so much bandwidth in my wee brain. And all of a sudden it was being occupied by anxiety or um, fear or just a lack of understanding, that big thing. I don't know what's happening. I don't know what to do, because I think for many of us, doing something helps with the anxiety. And so it's taken a good 3 weeks, four, hell, I don't even know how long I've been home anymore. But but all of a sudden a rhythm has started to fall into place. On the other hand, in one of my groups yesterday, the big question of the day was, you know, how do other people handle it when your small children are running around going, I need you? No, it's tough.
it is.
It's tough right
Can you
now.
can you tell us a little bit more about that rhythm that you said you've kind of found? How much of that would you say is kind of nature versus nurture? How much of that is just like, well, after a while you've kind of gotten into it, and how much of that is you saying, okay, tomorrow morning, these are the things that I'm going to do, and I'm going to kind of force myself into that rhythm?
I can't force myself into the rhythm. I tend to live in the moment, and there for a while, all the moments were consumed with uh, a gathering of information. What's going on? Is it happening here? Is it happening there? What does shelter in place mean? Oh my gosh, how much bread can I possibly eat? Because that's one of the things that I do. I, you know, um, so I can't force myself into that place. But I think being in tune with what's happening for me in the moment is what helped. And then we started adding um, connecting through Zoom. The face to face in my life came back a little bit, whether that was opening up with people on Slack or opening up in the Zoom channels. We began to get that sense of social connectedness from afar that we used to get in person. Um, there are still days where I wake up and say, I'm going to put away that damn tree. But hey, today was the day.
Today was the day, and who knows what
you know,
tomorrow will
Today
bring.
was the day.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I think that that's part of why it's difficult, is that we make a to-do list, and then either our emotional well-being is different the next day, or there are more distractions in our personal life. I was reading an article today written by somebody who was offering tips on, I've been working at home for over 9 years, and these are the top tips. And the second tip was have a distraction-free environment. I closed it right there. You obviously don't have anybody living with you.
Right.
Um, what does distraction free mean?
Yeah. Yeah. I think,
You know,
and I think there's like exterior distractions and interior distractions. Exterior
absolutely.
distractions, I can turn off the TV, I can turn off the radio.
Right.
But interior distractions, those that kind of like creeping fear that sometimes we feel of like, am
Hmm.
I going to be able to get the food I need for my family when I go to the grocery store next? Or, is my are the older members in my family, are they going to stay healthy? And is there anything that I can do to help my neighbors who might not be in a situation that I'm in?
Hmm.
I think those interior distractions are a lot harder to turn off. And I think that's I think
Yeah.
that kind of contributes to why a lot of people are having a difficult time focusing. Um, but
Well, I think too, there's so many more personal responsibilities that are placed on our shoulders than before. When you mentioned, how are my parents? I know several people who are now doing online grocery shopping, for their parents who live in another state. Well, that was not a task that was in their lives a month ago.
right,
And when we think about our priorities, our intimate family members and our livelihood are top of the list.
yeah, and I think that's huge. And kind of going along with focus, I want to share an anecdote about Kathy that not everyone knows. Kathy has, yeah,
Ooh,
and
you're telling my
I'm telling your
secrets?
secrets, but this is a good secret. I'll only share good secrets in this call. Um, Kathy has an unbelievable ability to remember people's names, and I think a lot of it has to do with her ability to focus and her ability to live in the moment, as she said. But Kathy, I'd love to hear it from you. How do you feel like you developed that skill? How do you feel like you are able to remember so many people and their names, and not just their names, but more about who they are?
Well, it's twofold. There was a time in my life, what people who know me are going to find it very hard to believe. One, I never expressed an opinion
I don't
ever
believe it.
to
I don't
anyone.
believe it.
No, no, but nobody does. Yeah, I got over that. The other thing, and maybe this has happened to other people in our audience today, that they have met somebody before and then they found that that person doesn't remember their name. There was a period there where I had to reintroduce myself over and over and over. So for me, it is critically important that I remember people. And I don't have a little trick for that. Um, my friend Mickey here in Atlanta watches me and he says when I use my finger and I point out and I'm naming everybody in my meetup, he thinks I have something in my fingers that, it's helping me remember. But I don't. The secret to remembering somebody's name is to look them in the eye, listen to what they're saying, and maybe you repeat their name a couple of times if you need a little trick into it. But I remember it because I care. I am listening to what the person is saying. Sometimes I just have to put on my therapist face that says, here's my real secret. I have a good therapist face that looks like I care even when I don't. But but because I'm listening to people talk about what's important to them, that's a connection, that's a deepened relationship, and so it's easier for me to remember their names. If they're wearing the same clothes and sitting in the same place when I met them, if they're in the grocery store, it goes out the window.
I think that's a big part of it, and you and I talked briefly about this yesterday. Um, Being able to place the context of where you met someone and where you first heard that name, I
Mm-hmm.
think is absolutely critical. And I like what you're saying of looking them in the eye, keying in on things that are important to them. I know that this is something that I am trying to be better at. Um, that ping from the cell phone. If I'm meeting someone and I get the ping from the cell phone, I hear that buzz in my pocket. What is all of our reactions? We pull it out and we say, "Hey, who's trying to get a
Yep.
hold of me?" And
Yep.
and I think not doing that and just being there more in the moment and not disrupting that interaction, I think that helps for the next time you run into someone and you see them, and the context that you remember your first interaction is a full stream. It doesn't have an interruption from when you pulled out your phone and were taken out of that moment.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we can use that same focus when in today's climate as well. I think it's important to try to stay in the moment, and obviously we talked about the internal distractions that we hear, and sometimes those are
Mm-hmm.
harder to turn off. But I think when we can be present and focus on the task at hand, obviously that spikes our productivity for sure.
Right. I think I mentioned yesterday that when my daughter was growing up, I would she would disrupt me, and I would say to her, "You don't have my full attention," you know, which is a nicer way of saying, "Pull away, don't bother me." But but it's but people know when you're not giving them your full attention, and we it's so easy to not pay attention that just the act of giving somebody my undivided attention is so heartwarming to them that they are touched, and there's a moment of intimacy because they begin to tell me things they've never had the opportunity to share before, perhaps. I mean, we're talking about, like at word camp or meetup or any place in general, but these are not intimate friends. These are people who are people, and everybody is unique, and everybody wants to feel like they belong and that they are important. And how much time does it really take to square up, look at them one on one, and listen to what they have to say? I, People want to feel valuable. They are valuable. We're all unique. I learn something from everybody I ever meet. And and I think that's the piece of connecting that we're missing in a lot of conversations, because over the last couple of years when I've been talking about conversations matter, people go, well, I talk all the time, or I don't want to talk to people, or whatever. It's not the words we're saying, it's it's the value that we're bringing to the conversation. Can we push it one dimension further? Um, yes, I can talk about my La Crusade pots and pans, but that doesn't move a relationship any deeper. So I think that all of us can practice on that. I have to turn off that alarm that just went off in my ear. Okay.
I agree with you completely. I saw somewhere a saying once that said, everyone is excited about something, everyone is scared about something, and everyone is passionate about something. And I think those three things we might not share the exact same passion or the exact same fears or the exact same excitements, but I think everyone has something of value that they can bring to the table. And I want to bring it back to community a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about this, making these connections. What advice would you give to people that are looking to connect with people in this time when we are intentionally trying to avoid people?
Great
Yes.
question. Um, the first thing that pops in my brain is the fact that so many virtual meetings have I mean, my gosh, you could spend your whole week on a Zoom meeting with somebody somewhere about something, and and they become tiring. So let's think a minute about how can I create a connection in that group setting. You know, um, Maybe you've got 30 people on a call, and one of the things that you were doing here as we started, you were greeting people as they signed in and joined and acknowledging their presence. In a Zoom meeting where you have the face to face, you can make eye contact. Um, you can make an effort to call them by name. One of the things that helps that along is when you are doing a Zoom meeting, if you have given some thought ahead of time about what you can do to engage the audience at a personal level. Because we know that it's way too easy to listen to the conversation in the background while you've got your head down in your computer and doing whatever. I'm just going to throw it out there that working on your computer when somebody's talking is rude. It just is, you know. Either turn off your screen or go away. But that connection stuff needs to go both ways. So as a facilitator of an online meeting, you have the right and responsibility to set some ground rules around how your meetings will be conducted. You know, we expect everybody to show up. They don't have to be dressed up, but, you know, don't be laying in your bed with your laptop propped up, you know. Come dressed to be in a business meeting or be present. But it's hard to do in these virtual meetings, Devin, because as you're recognizing, as you're doing them, you have a lot of hats to wear. You're the host, you're paying attention to me, you're trying to pay attention to what's happening in chats. Somebody somewhere is paying attention to technology. And so we're discovering that it takes more people to run a virtual meeting and have it effective than it does in live, we're all in the same room meeting.
Yeah.
That makes sense. And I kind of went off on a tangent
No,
there.
you're fine. I think it's important to key into that, actually. I think in a social interaction, I think most of us have been instilled with these values of respecting other people's time, respecting their questions, respecting their voice. So in a classroom setting, if someone raises a hand, the teacher can call on that person, and the rest of the class traditionally is fairly respectful as they ask their question. But I feel like in a Zoom call, it's just me sitting in my computer. You know, that's I don't have a classroom. I don't have a physical presence, and so I think typing my question out on the keyboard, sometimes it's more difficult to kind of be respectful because we don't have those social cues to kind of play off each other. But I think it's still important to try to cue into that when we can.
Right, and I think the responsibility needs to be on the one facilitating the meeting, not on me as an attendee. And I'll come with questions. And for some people, typing out a question is a whole lot less threatening than saying it out loud in a live event. I still, in-person event, we still don't know what to call
Yeah, I don't know the
things.
terminology.
Because this is live and this is still face-to-face and it's still in person. But those meetings where I can reach out and touch someone was the difference.
And that's, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was going to say that's,
yeah.
You go, Kathy.
Go, your turn. Your turn.
Okay. I was going to say that's something that you've always impressed me with is your one-on-one interactions. And kind of going off of remembering people's names, your one-on-one interaction, your interpersonal communication, every time I've seen it has been very impressive. Is that a skill that you work on, or is that just something that you were born with, or how did you get to where you're at right now?
I think there was probably a piece of that was part of my personality from day one, because I've always been a talker. There was a time where I was more of a talker than a listener. In the first grade, I had to stand out in the hallway with a sign around my neck that says, "Kathy can't be quiet." You know, shame to the max.
Are you the original Chatty Kathy?
Oh yeah, just pull that string and off I go. And so all of that was squashed for a long, long time. I do think that, like I said, there's part of that in my personality, because I don't have to work hard at engaging in conversation now. It took me a lot of years and a lot of therapy to get back to that place. But I do believe that it's a skill that can be developed, you know, and I referred to some of it in terms of taking the time to look at the person you're talking to and put the damn phone in your pocket. You know, and it's so hard. We hide behind the screens, and I do understand that. One of my gifts, and it's part of my being able to engage people, is I see the invisible people, the ones who are standing off by themselves and don't really want to be. Nobody really wants to be alone. They're just apprehensive about approaching a group, whether that's in these virtual meetings or whether it's walking up to a group of people you don't know. And I was going to say it's pretty easy, but then I realized that was not the right phrase at all. Um, if we come back to those easy common denominators, you know, orange is my color, okay? So if I see anybody who's wearing orange, I've got an easy opening. It's just walk right up and say, oh my God, I love that, whatever thing you've got on that's orange, and say, that's my color. And all of a sudden, we've made a connection. Sports caps, whatever. It's pretty easy to find a common connection that's non-threatening. Color of your hair, whatever you're wearing, whatever. It's, and then moving on from there to asking people. I don't have to do the talking. All I have to do is listen. So after I've said, oh my gosh, I love that orange scarf, and then they tell me thank you and where they got it and yada yada, then I say, tell me about your WordPress journey. And they do, and all I have to do is stand there and pay attention.
Yeah, which for some of us is really hard to just stand there and pay attention, but I think it's a skill worth working on for sure.
Yeah, it is, and that is the skill development, and it's um, I know he's not on here, but I was going to say my son-in-law, but I know he's not listening. But anyway, this is not a secret. But he struggles with that social anxiety, and so my exuberant, extroverted daughter has given him some coaching tips over the years about how to just do these little icebreakers. You know, how about them Braves? Just something to get the other person talking.
Yeah.
And then it's easier to flow in the conversation.
Yeah, and I think it's always hardest the first time you do it. You know, it's the first time you do it is always, you know, it's kind of like when you're a kid and you go to a water park and there's the big scary slide, you know. The first time you go down it, it's a little terrifying, but the second time it's not nearly as bad. And by the fifth time you've done it, it's a walk in the park. And I think the same is true for introducing people into a group setting, bringing them into a group conversation. The first time it might be a little bit daunting, like, well, what if I reach out to them? And what if I reach out a hand and they just ignore the hand? You know, I'm going to look kind of foolish standing there with my hand extended, but I think it's worth trying to bring people into our circles, worth reaching out and trying to lend people a voice so that they can be heard as well.
Right. So some of that responsibility falls back on those of us who are conversation starters. Look for the people who are loitering on the fringe.
Yeah.
And make eye contact, and a nod of the head is sometimes all you need to go with.
Yeah, and you kind of touched on a couple tips here, but I'm curious if you have any solid tips, concrete tips for people that want to improve their conversations, perhaps for a business purpose. You know, if they want to improve their communication with a client or a coworker, perhaps on a project they're working on. Do you have any tips for someone like that?
I think the first place to start is asking yourself, what do I want out of this conversation? I know that one of the questions that was given to me before we got started was, you know, how do you communicate with your supporters, you know, just business people or your advocates or whatever. And it's like, well, what do you want from them? What do you want out of this conversation? Not in a selfish manner, but you have an agenda going in. Knowing what your agenda is going to make it easier to guide the conversation, to elicit from them what it is you want to know. Um, I think a lot of conversations in a business setting are easier either one-on-one or in small groups. Having a big networking event, for example, is one strategy, but it's not a strategy for deepening relationships. Um, I don't. A tip for doing it. That it comes so naturally to me that it's hard. It is hard to stop and say, Kathy, what is it you actually do
Right.
that helps you build a community? And what is it that I actually do that helps me build the person in that community? And then I start having to dissect it and bring it back to the smallest thing. And we start with the small kernels, you know. Okay, you're a Braves fan.
Right.
And then you build it up. My friend Brad, for example, has recently brought together a group of people who adore bourbon as much as he does. And they happen to be business colleagues and supporters, but you get more out of those small conversations than you ever would in a formal business meeting. So it's finding a way to carve out those, I'm going to use the word intimate because they're
Right.
small. And when you have a small group, people are more prone to be real. And as you get real, you become vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
And in our vulnerability is where the magic happens, is where the power is. I'm not talking about wearing your emotions on your sleeve. I'm talking about taking off the masks. You asked me earlier about my experience in the WordPress community and why I keep signing up year after year, keep doing this. And it's because I have these stories of real life people that I have a history with. I can remember when Trisha came to her first word camp 10 years ago, whenever it was, a long time ago. And I can remember her saying at that time, all I want to do is get off WordPress.com and get on .org. And she left that camp with that knowledge. And she has grown over these years. And she has left her full-time salaried position to run her own business. And that power of the community shaping and transforming people is what keeps me coming back. And we can do that in our own small businesses. I'm going to just guess that most of the people that are on the call are freelancers, small business owners, independent entrepreneurs, whatever you want, how you describe yourself. We're not big companies. But we can take the time to nurture those relationships one-on-one and step back, and the ripple effect changes people.
I think it's huge.
And for me, it's powerful to know I played a part in that. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say I think that's huge, and I think you hit the nail on the head. Is year after year, being a lead organizer is not easy. I haven't done it yet, but I've heard from a lot of different lead organizers that it takes a lot of effort, a lot of energy, and it's not easy. So it's like, why do you put yourself through something that's so difficult? And I think you hit the nail on the head. It's because these aren't just events that you're putting on, it's people's lives. You find these stories within these
Mm-hmm.
people, and I think that's what is a big motivator for you. I'm curious, you always have a great group around you. How do you help motivate those around you as well, especially within the WordPress community, to continue to be a part of this and continue with this journey?
One of the things that I've learned about myself is what I'm good at and what I'm not good at. And not everybody is is good at what I'm good at. Okay. I I think broad picture. I'm a visionary. I can lead people. I can touch people. My friends say I can sell, ice to an Eskimo. But in order to have an effective group, I need to fill it with the pieces that I'm not good at. Okay? I am not detail oriented. My friend Diana is. And so she was my co-lead organizer. And she's got project management written all over herself. So I surround myself with people who have skills I don't have. And then I acknowledge to them, you have skills I don't have. Not in this codependent kind of way, but in this collective wisdom kind of way. So that when you have a group of 10 people, all with the common goal, whether it's launching a business product or running a word camp or any darn thing, it takes a village. And everybody has a unique point of view and a unique voice. And giving them the freedom to exercise that voice and giving them the responsibility of some ownership that they can run with is a gift to them. And it makes it all look good. So my role is to nurture those gifts in other people.
I like that. And I think it's kind of like we're all a different puzzle piece, and it's no one by themselves is a complete picture, but as we find different people to bring into our lives and in this situation into the organizing team for WordCamp Atlanta, we can build out that complete picture by finding the right people that clip together with us to build that complete picture.
Correct. One of the things I was working on earlier today, it's not quite there yet, but I have a tool for people to begin to assess and define their working style. It'll be live about an hour after we shut up, okay? But it's called a working style assessment, so that it's broken down into doers and learners, and I don't know, there's 4 things: doers and learners and lovers, and I don't know, something else. Doesn't matter. But first I have to know what my style is, so that I can go out and find the Dianas of the world to complement that. And I mention it because I think that coming back around to where we are today, and why our whole focus and motivation is thrown askew, is maybe my work style is very different than my home style. And so I'm having to shift from, okay, here's my worker self, and I'm a doer at work. Boy, I can just punch it out, boom, 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 boom. But at home, that's when I turn off work, but we're not able to turn off work. And things get very, very muddy. My role as a parent is very different than my role at work. Now, with maturity and wisdom and having lived a lot of years, most of that is now blurred for me. I am who I am because I'm old enough to not care what people think about me so much anymore. But I think that that's why our lives are disrupted and out of focus, is we're juggling too many things with not enough room to give any one of them the attention they desire. So that's not really a tip. We can go online all day and, tips to be productive, and they'll tell you, well, set aside all distractions. Hello.
Right.
That's not it.
Yeah.
It's how do I give the time I need to give to my employer and my 3 children that are at home, who are also trying to learn on the computer at home, whatever variation of schooling is being played out at your house, and a spouse, partner, or whatever, and an animal. And all of those things are in that same square footage at the same damn time.
It makes it a lot more difficult to compartmentalize for sure when you have those overlapping
Hmm.
um, Venn diagram, instead of having like, oh, here's work, here's play,
Yeah.
and all that, it's all suddenly one circle.
Uh-huh.
And I think that's difficult for a lot of people.
It is, and it's because I don't have an employer. It's easy for me to say, well, in all things, make this your number one priority. But I don't live your life. And even though we're all going through the same storm, we're traveling it in different boats, you know.
Right.
And so what works for me may or may not work for you. I do know that for most people, having somebody or something or a place where you can unload some of that emotion will free up a lot of space that you can then devote to focus as opposed to just coping.
Yeah. And I agree with you completely. I think it's important to have something in your life that moves you physically, staying active, I think is a big part of this. When your body is moving, you release endorphins and the physiological, I think helps you maintain a better mindset. But I think it's good to have something that moves you physically, something that
Mm-hmm.
moves you emotionally, so that you don't have to just put on a brave face, laugh, cry, get mad, whatever, like just let your emotions come out. And I think something that moves you creatively. For a lot of people, that's hobbies, whether that's trying your hand at poetry or painting or photography, whatever it might be. I think it's important in these times for people to try to find those three things and to stick with them.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
And people are getting creative with that. Our mutual friend, Michelle, I don't know how to say her last name now, but Michelle, one of the things that one of her gifts, she's a vocalist, so she sings. And so she sings every evening and then puts it out on Facebook. And it's something that's fulfilling for her. And then it touches the lives of those who hear her beautiful voice.
yeah,
And all of us have something we can hone in on. It's just it's just damn hard right now. And you know,
it is. But I think we can pull together and get through it. I think relying on the communities that
I've no
exist.
doubt.
Yeah, for sure. Well, we're coming up on time, Kathy, but was there anything else that you wanted to talk about
Hmm.
or anything else that you wanted to leave our viewers with?
Oh my God, Devin, I could talk from now until 5 o'clock, but nobody be here to listen.
I'll be here.
But I know. Um, to my friends who gave us questions to beat around yesterday, um, or to not beat around, but gave us questions. Devin and I tossed them around yesterday, and we really have touched on a lot of them today. If we have not, please stick them in the comments. Do something, reach out to us, and we will answer you. If you don't want to do it publicly in comments, just find us. We're here. The only other thing um, I will give it to you that how to find me at the page that I'm talking about on my website with this style assessment. Nah, I have nothing else.
Well, for sure, tell the viewers where they can find you. If they have follow-up questions or if they just want to connect with you on Twitter or Instagram, let them know how they can connect with you.
Sure, it's real easy. It is my first initial last name, K Drewien, on all the things.
And that's
It's
Drewien, right?
correct. K. I always spell it. It's Kathy with a K, so it's KDrewien.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for your
And
time.
my website is Kathy Drewien. Yeah. Thanks, Devin. Thanks, everybody, for hanging out.
I appreciate it so much. And everyone that's here, hit the heart button and say thank you for Kathy for joining us today. All right, Kathy, let's talk soon.
Right. Okay.
Bye.
Bye.